What's going on, guys? We are back today with another video, and we are going to do like we did the other night, where I compare limited epics versus limited legendary cards and basically explain why I feel like some of these limited epic cards are better than limited legendary cards. Basically just trying to disprove to you guys that it's not all about the rarity, because a card can have a high rarity. That doesn't necessarily make it good. So let's go ahead and start off like I did last time. We're just going to start showing cards, and I'm going to explain... I'm in decks here. Where'd it go? My cards. I'm going to explain why I feel like certain cards might be better or comparable. Some of them might not even be better that I show. But I do like... let me look. Double check here. I do like every one of these cards on the list. I think all these I'm going to say are extremely playable in the right deck. So, but some of these limited legendary cards I'm going to mention I don't really think are playable or should be put in hardly any decks. So there are a couple, though, that are going to be exceptions, and I will clarify which ones I think are decent, but probably still shouldn't be limited legendary status. All right, so my first limited epic card on my list is Tungsten. I really like this card in a power per turn deck. That 14 power you get is pretty good for 5 energy. Let's go ahead and turn Do Not Disturb on. So for 5 energy, you get that 46 base, which is pretty decent already. And then when return, get that plus 14 perm. There is a downside. You do lose 1 energy perm. But if it's a high energy week, not that big a deal. Or if there's a limit. So you can really take advantage of weeks where it says the minimum you can get is, let's say, 15. So just throwing an example out there. Oh, minimum energy this week's 15. So you could start dinging your energy regen lower and lower, and it might not matter because you're still, no matter what, going to get that minimum 15. So take advantage of weeks like that, especially with these types of cards, where it might not seem as good, but it's really strong in those weeks where your energy minimums are high. All right, so I'm going to compare this card to another limited legendary. A limited legendary card. It's going to be Romulus. Is it Romulus? There it is. Romulus and Remus. For 2 energy, you get 18, which isn't terrible. When drawn, gain 4 energy perm. So we got 14 on one card, but this is a draw effect, not a return effect. And 4 on this one. Now, the other ability says, when played, your Lupus, Atlantic Fish, and Dire Wolf cards in hand gain plus 50 this turn. So, to me, that's not that great. I mean, how often are you running these cards in your deck? Probably, I mean, if you're playing Romulus, you're probably running all of them, but those cards aren't that great to begin with. Dire Wolf's decent, but the other two, probably wouldn't be running them, right? So, and those cards have to be in your hand. So, it seems a little weak. If they bumped up that gain plus 4 perm to a higher stat line, I'd say this card might be playable. But until that's done, no way this card should be a limited legendary card. Or, like I said, it just doesn't matter what the rarity is on cards. Some cards are just bad, and really, I mean, the rarity is just the rarity, right? Doesn't mean it's good. So, I don't think this card's really playable, personally. Let me know what you guys think. All right, moving on to the next card. We're going to show a really strong card. I really like this card. I think it goes in a lot of decks. It's very flexible. For 7 energy, you get the 50 base power, which is okay. It's under the threshold. I like it. But when played, your cards in hand get plus 21 for 9 turns. So it's going to stack because 9 turns is going to allow it to stack. So that's pretty strong, guys. You're getting a lot of power there for 7 energy. Now, on the downside is when you draw it after round 3, your cards, wherever they are, lose 10 perm. So there is a downside, but the upside is pretty good, especially if you can sweep some early wins. It might not even go to round 4 and 5. So, the downside not as bad, I feel like. So this card, extremely playable. Definitely get you a copy if you do not have one. I'm going to compare it to a limited legendary card. Here's one of my exceptions. I do actually like this card a lot. I think Doppler Effect is extremely playable and a good card. But I'm going to compare it to Andronicus because they are very similar. So when drawn, your science cards in hand gain plus 30 and cost -1 for only 2 turns. So last card gave us 21 for 9 turns, allowing a stack ability. This only targets science cards, so if it's when drawn. So if you draw and your hand is kind of clunky, doesn't have a lot of science cards at the time, it might not really hit anything except itself. So there is the downside of that, right? Because Andronicus is going to hit whatever is in your hand no matter what. So that's an upside there for Andronicus. But this card does give him a reduced cost. So there is that upside that the other card doesn't have. But there is still a downside to this card as well. When returned, your remaining science cards in hand lose 15 perms. So you're hoping for a fistful of science cards when you draw this, but okay, I draw it. Now I have all these science cards, so I have to try to get them out of my hand now to be able to play this card and get it cycling back. So there is that downside there too. I don't know if it's worse than Andronicus' downside. It feels worse when you're playing it because it feels a little clunky, but I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I just like this comparison between these two cards because they're very similar. I think Andronicus a little bit stronger, personally. But I do like Doppler if you have a good split deck, maybe like a 9/9 Carl Sagan or a, what's the other one? I'm blanking. Basically a 9/9 split kind of deck is kind of what I'm thinking for Doppler. Oh, the Vitruvian Conscious deck. That's the other one. All right, moving on to our next. We're going to go to a lock mechanic. I'm going to go with Eye of the Storm. I think this is a good substitute if you don't have... oh, man, I'm blanking on his name too now. The really good unlocking, a card that locks your hand and unlocks completely blank, and he buffs as well, but it's a limited legendary card. But this card's really good if you don't have that card. So Eye of the Storm says, when returned, all remaining cards in both players' hand lock next turn. So not only are you going to lock a couple cards in your opponent's hand, you're going to use this card, obviously, to unlock your cards when you overlock. So great card for that, especially in those specific decks that are running the Devil and all those cards that want to lock Hanging Gardens and buff the rest of your cards. So fantastic card, extremely playable. But again, it's kind of geared towards specific decks, either decks that want to self-lock or purposely lock your opponent's cards out. So there is that. But we're going to compare it to another lock card as well. And this card, to me, feels like it wants to be good, but when you play it, it's not. And it's Inland Taipan. When drawn, 2 opponents' random life on land cards in hand lock. So if they don't have any life on land cards, this card's not even doing anything, right? And then 2 random cards in hand burn 20 for the rest of the round. So you're going to get the burn effect, but the lock effect might not happen. So this is a when drawn effect. So if they light up, they're not actually losing, I don't believe they're losing power until after the cards are played. So they have the chance that when they're burning to go ahead and get them out of their hand. So that's the problem, is they're not actually going to lose the power until the turn's done. So it feels weak. Definitely feels weak. I think Eye of the Storm is a much better lock card, does what you want it to do. There's no stipulation on album. I think they need to remove that life on land effect there and just put 2 opponents' random cards in hand lock this turn. That would make this card way better, at least playable. Right now, I don't think it's really playable. I mean, you can play it, but I just don't think it's strong enough, personally. Next up, we are going to touch on a card everybody knows. It's real strong in this meta. Complete Knockout. You guys saw what I did there in boxing. All right, so when played, your cards with 70 or more base power, wherever they are, gain plus 14 until played. So real strong effect. It's a card you're going to build your deck around. You're going to get a lot of 70 plus power cards in the deck, and this card's going to shine, right? So great card. Definitely should be a limited legendary card. Now let's go over to another card. And this is kind of similar, but shockingly terrible. At least I think. I mean, it's probably playable, but... so, Behemoth. When returned, all remaining cards in both players' hands with 80 or more base power gain plus 50 this round. So, obviously, if you're playing this, you have a bunch of cards in your hand over 80 power. So, there's that stipulation that's a little worse than boxing is 80, right? And then they're gaining 50. It's only max, or what is it? Max, you're going to get, well, I guess you could play it by itself, but you don't really want to play it by itself. You want to at least play 2 cards so you can get 3 cards in your hand that are going to get that plus 50 buff. But still, I don't know, just feels a little clunky, feels a little weak. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely like boxing better for that stipulation of 70 or more base power versus the 80. I think it's kind of limits your card pool a little bit too. But that's enough on that one. Jumping over to this one is an interesting pick. I picked it because I feel like not a lot of people play this card, but I still think it's decent. And we have Chernikov Radiation. When drawn, if your deck has 2 or more ocean cards, your non-ocean cards in hand gain plus 20 for 2 turns. So that's pretty good. You're getting a nice buff, basically 100 power for your five cards in hand, right? If they're non-ocean cards. If your deck has 2 or more oceans, your non-oceans in hand. So you can draw this, have no ocean cards in hand. You're basically getting 100 power for 2 turns, and you're going to try to play all those cards. So for 6 energy, you're getting, 100 and almost 160 power. That's pretty decent. So I think this card is slept on a little bit, at least for what it does. And it's not hard to just jam 2 ocean cards in your deck and make this card play, halfway decent. There's a lot of decent ocean cards. Let's go ahead and compare it to a card, obviously limited legendary. Super Glue, only 3 energy. You're only getting 10 power, so it feels a little weak there. When played, your cards in hand gain plus 20 this turn. So immediate one-time effect. It doesn't carry in for 2 turns like the Radiation did. This card's only going to give it for the turn. So it's going to bring this card itself up to the 30 base power. That's kind of average where it needs to be anyway. If this card was at 30 base power to start, I think it would be a lot better. Probably at least playable. And then buff your other 2 cards you play 20 as well. But I think the fact that the base stat line here is only 10 makes this card feel a little underwhelming to me. Unless it's a really low energy week, which how often is that happening, right? And most of the time people are just running tiny decks anyway. They're just going to run you over. So I think this card is a little lackluster for a limited legendary. All right, let's move over to Paleontology. Card you guys probably have seen a lot of. I think this card's really good for a Paleontology card. 7 energy, 40 base power, a little lackluster. But when drawn, a random card in your hand is going to get plus 46 until played, which is nice. That brings it up over, 86 power for 7 there. And then when returned, you're also going to get another 46 power on a random card until played. So even if you can't play that card next turn, at least it's until played. So you're going to get the power eventually and eventually going to play it, right? So good cards. You're getting a lot of power for 7 energy, I think. Let's compare it to a Swiss Army knife. So Swiss Army knife, 5 for 50 base power. So that's fine. That's average. That's where you want to be. When drawn, an opponent's random card in hand costs plus 1 perm. So you do have a little bit of a blanking there, taxing effect there. And then a random card in your hand gains plus 15 until played. So there's that random card effect that we're going to get, but we're only getting plus 15. That last card was giving us I think it was plus 46 twice? This is only giving 15 for a limited legendary. It just feels really weak. And if you're losing the round, so now there's another effect we're going to get, but you got to be losing the round. Then you gain plus 15 this round. So really for the round is really going to, you want to draw this on 2 then, right? Because you have to at least be losing. You can't draw this turn 1 because that's not going to trigger. So you got to at least draw this turn 2 or turn 3. So at max, you're going to get 30 power out of it, plus the 15 until played. It just feels kind of weak versus that Arsinotherium, however you say that card. So definitely not the greatest. But there, again, it does have that little added taxing effect, but it's just 1 card. I think if it wasn't just a 1 random card, maybe if it hit all your opponent's hand, it might have a home in a tax deck. But even so, it still feels a little weak to me. All right, moving on. We're going to touch on another card I really enjoy. We actually played recently in a deck. Wolf Eel. When played, if played next to any life on land card, so there's our stipulation, we're going to get a little mini Pika effect out of this card. So think of it like Pika. Your opponent's cards in hand lose 5 perm. I think Pika is like 7. So that's pretty good, right? And this card gains plus 25 perm. I think, is Pika 25? Pika is either 25 or 35. So that's still pretty good. Keeps up with Pika. But the downside, obviously, is we have to play it next to a life on land card, which really is not that bad. I mean, that's doable. So I think this card's definitely playable. Pretty good. I like it. Now, let's compare it to a limited legendary. This card I also don't think is terrible, especially with the class it's in. I know some of you mentioned some of my picks last time are stronger than they look, but a lot of times I'm looking at these cards in a vacuum. I'm not comparing them to, the cards in that set are really good. Like, for instance, the espionage class right now is real strong with all those buffs, but I'm not really looking at that specifically. I'm looking at the card itself compared to this other card, right, in a vacuum. So I will say this card is a little better with the stipulation that it is in the espionage package, but if that wasn't a factor and we're just looking at in a vacuum with this card compared to Bullfield, when drawing your opponent's cards in hand, lose 7 this round. Okay, so it's a little bit higher, but it's not permanent. It's not permanent. It's just for the round. And this card gains plus 35 this round. So, again, 2 effects that aren't permanent. They're just for the round effects. Still decent. Still playable. But is it as strong as Wolf Eel over there hitting permanent? It's gaining permanent stats for the late game and dinging your opponent's hand permanently. I think Bullfield takes it, honestly, guys. But again, this card is in espionage, so it does get a little added bump if we're not looking in a vacuum. All right, only a couple more left here, guys. We've got Aurora Boris. All right, Aurora Boris, great card. It's at the start of each turn, this card's going to get plus 15 until played. So it's one of them cards that's going to sit in your hand, hopefully, and grow, similar to Sidonia until the end of the game. And then, bam, you're dropping a bomb. When you play it, though, it's going to lose 30 immediately. And then when returned, it's going to gain plus 30 until played. So there is the added ability that you're going to get that. You can get that plus 30 until played if you do need to play it. So it's not all bad, right? So decent card. I think it's really good. Let's go check out what I compared it to here. This card, I feel like, is extremely unplayable for a limited legendary, but maybe you guys disagree. DaRuMa Doll. At the start of each turn, if you're winning the round, this card gains plus 20 until played. So it is more. You're going to get the plus 20, right? It's 3 energy, only starts at 10 power. The other card started a lot higher. So definitely, if you play it, it's not all bad. This card, if you play it, you got to start back at 10. That's pretty bad to try to get built back up, right? And you got to be winning the round. That's the stipulation that I don't like with this card. So at any point, if you start losing the round or losing the game, all of a sudden this card's just sitting in your hand dead. You don't want to play it, number one, and now it's not even doing its stacking ability. It's just sitting there. Like, terrible. I mean, what if you draw this and you just never get ahead? All game, you're just sitting there and you're still sitting on a 310. That to me, that would just feel so bad. So I don't think this card's playable. I think there's so many better options. And it's a limited legendary. I just don't get it. Don't definitely not playable to me. All right, next up we're going to switch gears back into a taxing meta. Check out some tax cards. We've got Sandcat. I love little Sandcat. He's tiny, right? On 1 energy, 0 power, whatever. Definitely for a nice, cheap week, but when you're playing him, it needs to be a low energy week, right? Because we're taxing, right? So when drawn, your opponent's cards in hand cost +1 energy this round. So great taxing ability. That's the whole reason you're playing this card, guys, is taxing your opponent, trying to make them to where they can't play their cards. So hopefully when you do have this card, you got other cards that are going to give it a little buff. So most of the time you're not going to play it at 0, but I mean, if you have to, you have to. So, but I like Sandcat a lot. I've played it quite a bit, and I think it's good. Now, another taxing card that just doesn't make sense to me. It's so expensive, Ruby, 6 energy, 59 power. That's fine, okay. I'm okay with that. I wish it was cheaper because it's a tax deck, but okay. When returned, if you lost the turn, your opponent's cards, wherever they are, cost +1 energy next turn. So, Sandcat was for the round, right? This card's just for the next turn, so it's really not doing a whole lot. It's only going to affect 3 cards max. I mean, yeah, they have 5-card hand, but only 3 of them are really getting taxed, right? Because it's just the next turn. And you have to have lost the turn. And it's a return effect. Oh, it just feels so bad when you play this card. Let me know what you guys think. I just hate this card. Every time I play it, I'm like, dang it, I won the turn, doesn't do anything. I'm just like, this feels so bad. Like, I don't know, man. I just don't like it. All right, last up. This is number 10, guys. And this, you guys should have known this was coming. I hinted at it on my last video. Where's she at? My Snow Queen was the picture of the last video. So you guys should already know what I'm comparing it to. All right, when played, if it's the last turn of a round, gain +10 permanently and give your opponent -10 permanently. So a little expensive, 7 energy. I do wish it costed maybe 6, but still the effect is really good. It's like a mini Anubis, right? Because there is 10 permanent differential here. Or I'm sorry, 20 permanent differential. Same as Anubis, but Anubis costs 3. This costs 7. So there is that difference. Obviously, it's not as good as Anubis. But I think you're still getting 20 perm power, which is strong, just costs 7, right? So that's the downside, is the 7. But still a good card, I think. Still extremely playable. Now let's compare it to a limited legendary. Ooh, almost typed limited legendary. And you guys know which card it is. At least you should, if you've seen my last video. Electricity. When drawn, gain +10 power and gain +1 energy regen until this card is returned to your deck. So you're not getting it permanently. You just have to hold on to this card all game, and you're going to get that 10 regen and extra energy. Okay, so now it's gumming up a spot in my hand. But if you've played Electricity this game, gain an additional 10 until this is returned to your deck. So you can get it up to the 20. It's just not permanent. It's going to take up a slot. But there is the upside of getting the energy. So this card is okay. I mean, it's playable. I mean, I would play it. But I don't know. Is it as good as Snow Queen, who you can just play, get it out of your hand, move right along? I don't know. This card does have the 3 energy cost, which is obviously nicer. So if you do need to play it in a pinch, you're not, sucking up a whole ton of energy. So, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I prefer Snow Queen here. I think it's stronger. But some of you guys might like Electricity. I don't know. I think it's an interesting comparison for sure. But all right, guys, that's the video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. If you like these videos, we can keep doing the series. I'm trying to make a little mini series out of these epic compared to limited legendaries. We can, like I said, we can also do limited epics compared to limited rares, or limited rares compared to limited legendaries, whatever. I'm cool with making videos, guys. We can do whatever you guys want, so drop me some comments. But I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good night, guys.